Good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's summit. My name is Ankita Satam and I'm your host for today. As you know, in today's hybrid work culture, organizations are engaging their employees in variety of activities in order to assure their loyalty and commitment towards the company. Companies have also adopted the people first approach for the productive and engaging workplace. There's no denying the fact that positive employee engagement has direct impact towards improved organizational performance, achieving financial advantages and lower attrition rates. As hybrid workplaces offers opportunities and challenges for continuous employee engagement, business leaders are fostering culture of connection, collaboration, and continuous learning in flexible work environment. With this, Dun& Bradstreet is pleased to host a conference on the topic Effective Employee Engagement in a Hybrid Workplace Environment. We have an eminent lineup of speakers here. Let's take a quick look at the flow of today's session. Please refer to the agenda displayed on your screen right now. A promising agenda with an eminent lineup of speakers. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome and thank everyone for being a part of this session today. Moving on to the most awaited session, the panel discussion on the topic, Effective Employee Engagement in a Hybrid Work Environment. We have our first panelist, Dr. Monica Khanna, Director and Professor of Marketing, KJ Somaiya Institute of Management. Please welcome Dr. Khanna. Ma'am, I would request you if you can just come towards the dais, please. Dr. Khanna is the Director of KJ Somaiya Institute of Management, Mumbai, and Dean of Faculty of Management Studies at the Somaiya Vidyavihar University. Dr. Monica has academic experience of 29 years and industry experience of 4 years. She is visiting faculty at the universities in Germany and Russia. She has presented and published research papers at national and international conferences of repute and involved with international research projects. Welcome, ma'am. Our second panelist, Mr. Sarosh Bode, Head Global Human Resources, ACG Capsules. In career spanning 17 years, Sarosh has held varied HR leadership roles. He currently leads the human resources function globally for ACG Capsules, which is a leading partner to the healthcare industry. He plays a pivotal role in ACG's growth and transformation journey whilst overseeing the people management responsibilities of its manufacturing hubs across Asia, Europe, and Latin America, as well as its sales and service network globally. Welcome, Sarosh. Our third panelist, Mr. Vinod Nair, Head Human Resources, Mahindra Finance. Vinod has 23 plus years of experience in the field of HRD. He has worked with companies like Datamatics Financial Software and Services Limited, CMS Computers Limited, and currently at Mahindra Finance, he's heading the HR department. Welcome, Vinod. Our fourth panelist, Mr. Kunj Vihari Jandhyala, Head Strategic HR and Organization Effectiveness, Tata Power Company Limited. Kunj Vihari is a dynamic HR professional with over 18 years of experience in all areas of human resources. He holds the position of HR Strategic HR and Organization Effectiveness and heads the functions of HR Strategy, Organization Design, Talent and Performance Management, Succession Planning, Productivity, Organization Culture, and Change for Tata Power and its group companies. Welcome, sir. Next on panel, we have Mr. Nishant Kulgaonkar, SVP and Group Head HR, NTC Logistics India Private Limited. Nishant has completed his BE in and Masters in Labour Studies from Mumbai University. He is also an alumni of IIM Ahmedabad. He has over 24 years of rich domestic and international experience in engineering, entrepreneurship, and having worked with industries like IT, construction, shipping and logistics industry, with demonstrated initiative and success. Welcome, Nishant. Then we welcome Mr. Dipankar Ghosh, Chief Human Resource Officer, Bajaj Consumer Care. An executive coach and a people transformation leader, Dipankar Ghosh have 23 years of diverse experience in leading FMCG, automobile and service industry in the domain of HR, business partnering, strategic resource initiative, talent assurance, policy making and employee relations. Welcome, Mr. Ghosh. Finally, on panel, we have Mr. Ramakrishna Vyamajra, Chief Human Resources Officer, Home First Finance Company. RK is a CHRO for one of the most fastest growing housing finance company in the country, Home First. He has over 17 years of experience in the human resource reward and recognition and compensation and benefits. In his current year experience, he develops people strategies that ensure business growth and enables the organization to become one of the first choice of the emerging talent. Welcome, RK. The session will be moderated by Ms. Vishali Dongri, Partner and Head Human Capital Consulting, KPMG. Vishali has over 20 years of experience in the field of Human Capital Consulting, currently partner and head at People and Change at KPMG. Ex-partner, Human Capital Consulting at Deloitte, Director, Hewitt Associates, Principal Consultant, ECS. She has led large HR transformational and leadership projects in India, MENA, China, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, Australia, Sweden, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. I would request Vishali to take over and start the session. Welcome, Vishali. Over to you.
Eminent panelist, I need to be really prepared. I don't even know why am I needed here. So, because they are stalwarts from the industry, and I'm really privileged and honored to do the moderation. Can I start? Yeah. Right. As you all know, I've been in consulting and for last 2 years for consulting. World has really changed for us. Got to see various industries, various sectors having different impact of COVID and having different solutions brought in to manage the engagement level of the people. So it will be very interesting to see the perspective from different sectors of leaders from the field of HR to see how they manage the entire situation post-COVID while we introduce the hybrid organizational operating models. When COVID hit us 2 years back, we were all in the level playing field. Everyone, whichever industry, whatever maturity we had, we were in the same level playing field. It was that time, it was actually decided how we become successful or average or not successful. The kind of interventions each organization took decided what we will be doing now after post almost 2 years. We've sailed, we've been successful, and India has shown that we can absolutely manage the crisis. So let's learn from the experts how they actually did it. So hybrid as a definition is very different. People many times think hybrid is just virtual versus on-site and a combination of two. Hybrid in the last 2 years is quite different than just the virtual classification and an on-site classification. It's also about a gig workforce getting introduced into our entire ecosystem getting broadened, our operating models being completely reshaping and re-looked at. In this given scenario, when many a times, on one hand, you're managing the crisis, on the other hand, you have employees who are far away from you. How exactly do you manage the cultures, the engagement level? Dr. Monica, you've been a stalwart, you've been talking on this subject. It will be really nice to request you to just help us know what various organizations have gone through and made use of various intervention to manage the engagement level.
Okay, thank you, Vaishali. Thanks for inviting me for this panel discussion. As an academician, I'm heading the management school. As all of you are aware, the COVID suddenly struck us. And in March 2020, we actually closed down the institute for just 3 days. We thought that in 3 days we'll all be back. It's just a small holiday that all of us are having. And then it all struck us that, this seems to be a long haul. It doesn't seem to be going away so fast. So we quickly, seized the situation. We analyzed the whole thing and we realized that, it won't work in the normal way now. And we quickly got onto the Zoom platform. And all of us, I think, the manner in which the faculty and the staff in our institute, we all got on to the digital platform. My observation, my thinking was that I think the basic glue for the employee engagement, who are all sitting in different corners of Mumbai, I think it's the positive organization culture. The culture of empowerment that has been given to all the faculty and staff, and the manner in which we give them the freedom and the flexibility, I think that actually comprises the organization culture and the positivity part, and that's where everybody is got engaged. And so whether it is offline or online, the commitment was very obvious. So everyone got onto the virtual platform and saw to it that there is no academic loss as far as the student community is concerned. Because in the month of March, we actually closed few days before their final exams. So it was a big loss for the students, and also many of the first year students were going for their summer internship. Many companies just cancelled their summer internship. Our placement department got into an overdrive and saw to it that they all were replaced for their summer internship. I think all these things are not possible if there is no positivity and the positive organization culture that is there within the organization. So I think it's very important to empower people, and to then only they will get engaged, because there is a sense of commitment and there's a sense of purpose to be engaged with the organization itself.
Yeah, I think very well said. What Doctor just mentioned is the bringing in the positive culture. I think culture really is very, very critical, and we'll talk about it when we do further discussion. But it's a very interesting few points which Doctor has mentioned about positivity, empowerment, and the entire culture, the way they managed it. So thanks, Doc. So with this, I'm going to request Kunj. I am using the short form for your name. It is too longish, and to remember all the names is going to be a very, very difficult task. So please pardon me in case I go wrong. So you're from a sector which is itself going through a lot of transformation, from a traditional energy sector to a new age energy with net zero. All of that, research has shown that this sector attracts a little less employees than the rest. But it's a very, very responsible and a very high impact sector. In this given scenario, with all the changes in the environment and the energy as a whole, with COVID hitting us and we moving to hybrid, how did you actually manage the entire engagement levels?
Yeah, good morning, Vishali, and it's a pleasure to be part of this panel with my eminent co-panelists. Thanks for the opportunity. So, as you said, Tata Power is in the energy sector, and the sector itself is transforming. I mean, maybe 5 years or a decade back, I mean, it would not have been as exciting as today. Today, arguably, I think the power sector, the energy sector is one of the most happening sectors. And that's what, as Vishali also said, it is attracting a lot of talent. Now, Tata Power is in the entire value chain of power, starting from fuel, power generation, power transmission, power distribution, power trading, and all the new age businesses, the renewables, the EV charging, home automation, and many other customer solutions that we are giving. So we are in a stage of transformation. So each of the business itself is so diverse, and therefore the demographics of the workforce that is working is also diverse. So we have a diverse set of workforce working with us. The second thing is that we are growing. We have a very ambitious growth plan. We are on that path, and therefore we are having a lot of intake of talent. And our philosophy is to grow talent from down. That means we take trainees and then we develop them for higher roles. We limit our lateral recruitment to the absolute minimum where niche skill sets are required. So all this, the implication of all this is that we did a modeling, in fact, and saw that what will the organization look like 5 years down the line if we continue with our hiring plans, our philosophy of taking talent from below and developing them, modeling the attrition, simulating, and then looking at retirements. And we realized that 5 years down the line, we are going to be as young as any other IT company. And that is something which is a big thing for us. So our earlier approach, like many other organizations of maybe a one-size-fits-all for everyone, an annual engagement survey to just gauge the employee engagement would not do. So it required a completely different approach, and that set us on the path of thinking that. So these two factors, and coupled by, of course, what is happening in the industry overall, that is looking at talent, how the entire paradigm of employee engagement is changing from periodic check-ins to a continuous sort of engagement. Where we're looking at more and more on employee experience, where we design our processes rather than looking at it from an organization process point of view, looking at keeping employee at the center. So I think these were some of the factors which really made us rethink our approach on employee engagement. And we did make several changes. One is, of course, along with the annual survey, pulse survey, sentiment analysis, looking at our own approach to engagement, designing various processes and work systems in the organization, taking feedback from the employee, rather keeping them at the center, looking at their journey. So I think we have a lot to learn from from marketing and sales and in the customer experience aspect. So looking at the journey of the employee from the day he or she joins the organization, completes 10 days, 1 month induction, different stages in the employee life cycle, promotions, transfers, role change, etc. And measuring engagement continuously at those points rather than having point of time or annual engagement survey. And the whole, the pandemic really accelerated our move to adoption of digital methods in this.
Thanks, Kunj. Very interesting, and we'd like to know a little more later on the predictive modeling which you did. It will be very interesting to see what were some of the independent variables. So that's an interesting one. Also, you talked about the overall employee experience, and I'm very glad to say this, share this, that many a times, most of the time we are talking is about just the tech side. We buy product of technology to see whether our employees will be engaged without really understanding what the employee experience is. So that's very good that you talked about the journey maps which you've created and worked on the employee experience. So now with this, I'll go to Vinod. Vinod, you were from another sector which did not stop breathing at all. It was on the move, one of the fastest sector which coped up with the crisis was the financial services sector. So what is your take on the overall, how did you manage one, the crisis, and at the same time looked at the employees are engaged with us? What are some of the things which you all worked on in this last 2 years, and what is your plan going forward also?
Sure. Thank you very much, Vaishali, for the question. Very good morning to all of you. So I work in an organization which has 20,000 employees spread across 1,300 branches across all the states in India. Right. So that's the configuration. So if we have to connect to everyone, and that too in a situation when everyone had to just shut down these shutters on a daily basis, the first thing that people started thinking is, "Hamara kya hoga? What is it that's going to happen to me?" So immediately within the next 1 week or so, as soon as we were assured, like how doctor said, as soon as we were assured that we are not going to come back for the next 2-3 months, our management got on a webcast. You have to use digital method. So we actually got on a webcast and sent a mobile link to everyone saying that please get on the webcast. The management would like to start talking to you. Right, so connection began. And the first thing that the MD himself talked about is your jobs are assured. Right. So that's the assurance saying that okay, my job is assured. I am a first basic level is ensured. We started giving out salaries before 5 days before time because we were not sure whether the ATMs and the banks would be able to keep up to the pace that we require. So we started giving advances and then settling it off against the actual salaries. These are basic things, but I think that worked for us very well because to engage people, you need to actually show proactiveness. Being part of an M&M group also helps a lot because immediately we, at the parent level, at the M&M group level, Mr. Rusbe, who just took up as a CHRO that time, he actually formed a lot of committees, the emergency committees at at a sector level, at a group level, as well as for us it was at the regional level also. So the safety committees were then re-designated or their names were moved to actually handling all the rapid action activities. So they were called rapid action forces. So then this committee became the point of contact for all kind of queries, all escalations. So that's something that took care of saying that what you need to do, when you need to do, how you need to do. There's something that got into, that started flowing directly from the sector, from the group to the sector, to the company, to the region level. Right, so the communication was clear. HR and IT, if we have a lot of HR folks inside this room, I will not take credit from others, but I think HR and IT actually stood up during this period and started showing that when in a situation where we were never used to handling such things in the past, now we can actually get up and create something new for you very quickly and very swiftly, and we actually start implementing it. So people were looking up to someone who will start talking to them regularly. So I think HR and IT, as a collaboration, we took charge and we actually started talking and started creating those methods of starting to connect continuously. We had a lot of such sessions that we created, such engagement activities that we created, saying that every day the supervisor and the subordinate should speak, and when they speak, ask them not only about themselves but about their families. Ask them what are the issues, and we gave them a list of things that we are doing. And some things that I'm sure all of us have done is started creating options for handling the medical issues. So we tied up with Taking Care immediately. There is a company called Nightingale, which is a Mahindra group. So we actually tied up with them and said that if there's someone who's actually getting a quarantine, you can actually call up at this number and they will support you, and that will be free of cost. You don't bother about it. They will tell you what's to be done, how you need to get yourself quarantined, and how you will be taken care. Starting from there, then we got into other aspects, saying that okay, now the basics are taken care. People should be, the anxiety levels of people are now at a level where we can still control and handle. Then we started creating a lot of modules. So how do you keep them engaged? We already had an LMS system. We had a tool which was already available. So we started curating a lot of programs for employees. We said, let's curate some programs which are going to help us in future. In the next 2 years, what are the things that will help us? So we started creating those programs. We started talking to the business heads. We started talking to the OEMs, the manufacturers, and started having webcast sessions for everyone. saying that can M&M, can Tata Motors, can Hyundai come and talk to our employees about the product? Can they talk about how the products have to be sold? What is the method? How is it different from the other product? So we started keeping them engaged from the functional side. From the behavioral side, I don't need to tell you all how HR would have created a lot of programs, because we started having drawing contests, we started having Antakshari contests, we started engaging with them and keeping them busy, not only them but also their family members, because when we start having Antaksharis, you know that the family is also singing along with you. So you can have your husband, you can have your mother singing in those contests. But we actually also revamped the entire thing. We used to have a list of employee engagement programs. Quickly we got into a room and created something where we created a version 2, where what could be done in an online format, and it's still continuing now. So we started having a Mahindra Finance Got Talent contest. Okay, over and above these standard contests that we used to have, we said, can we have those contests? Can we create some games? Can we have quizzes? So how do we ensure that people are engaged? We are continuously talking to them, but with a clear message that we are there for you. We are taking care of your health. We are taking care of all the requirements that you have from the financial angle and all. Then moving into all the other digitization that I think Kunj has already touched most of the parts. I was actually thinking, okay, he's taking out a lot of boxes from what I was about to talk about. All right, digitization did happen. We have a chatbot that's there 24/7. I talked about LMS. The entire onboarding was online, so we could actually onboard a lot of people in an online environment. We could actually give them all these IT support services on an online platform. I think kudos to the IT team. They also actually got up and started giving solutions beyond what was standard when we talk about all the IT issues we have. I think a lot of things that got done, but from the engagement perspective, yes, I would actually reverberate what Kunj as well as Vishali talked about. Yes, employee experience is what we are actually focusing on today. All right, and in the recent past, starting from Jan, we've actually got back to the employees and started asking them, tell me how happy are you? Tell me what are your experiences in all these spaces. Talk about joining, talk about confirmations, transfers, attendances, performance management systems and everything. And then we said that what can we change? How do we change? All right, so we have created around 9 such projects at a group level now, which is, we've coined it under Project Anubhav, that's experience. And we're saying that we are actually driving it through as a project in an agile methodology, doing design thinking, going back to people and asking and seeing how can we actually create those 100 experiences that will actually engage our employees. And using digitization, using new age methods, how can we actually make it much better, much more closer to the people?
Right. I think I like the way so passionately you talked about so many things in just maybe 5-7 minutes, and we'll come back to you. I think there's much to learn. But apart from all the interventions you talked about, which and Mahindra, Tata's has always been forward-looking, and it's quite a learning. So we'll deep dive on some of the interventions. But what I really liked about your starting statement when you mentioned that connecting with almost 20,000 people immediately and giving them assurance that they will probably not be losing jobs was one of the most important things, because as I said, I'm in consulting. I worked with almost all. I can't touch Mahindra because it's an audit client for us, but most of the others I've got a privilege to work with. So the learning is that these last 2 years, the highest revenue for most consulting firm is come from employee cost cutting. And in this scenario, if organizations, and I'm very, it's not a very proud fact, it was not a very good situation for many of us, but those who have passed this storm without even touching a single employee is hats off to them, because many organizations, almost 70 to 80% of the organizations in India looked at their cost, and especially the employee cost. So I think this is good that you shared with us. Going to our friend from ACG, I've got an opportunity to interact with you all. So you've been low profile, but you have very forward-looking HR interventions. That's my learning. And while you are extremely business focused, but at the same time you do some very serious HR intervention. So what are some of the strategies which you applied during this time to see how we have all the engagement levels going high? Were the engagement level first of all dropped at any point of time, and what strategies you adopted? Over to you.
Thank you, Vishali, and thank you at the outset for all the kind words for the organization. Thank you to DNB for having me here, and I must say it's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad to gain all these perspectives from different organizations, different sectors, while I'm here and learning as well. To start with, I think when we speak of engagement, and for me, I'll come to some of the pillars of engagement that we practice as an organization. But for those pillars, the foundational values as of now that we are living are flexibility, trust, and empathy. Let me start off with a little on flexibility. I think every global survey on the subject on hybrid that you would be reading on right now talks of the need for flexibility, especially with the younger population. I was just reading yesterday, there was a survey by Nationwide in the US, and this organization kind of revealed that 62% of the Gen Z, 51% of the millennial workforce is saying we will decide whether we want to continue with this organization based on what the return to work policy is going to be like. So if it's not looking hybrid, looking largely remote, possibly we are looking elsewhere. So, we are in the manufacturing space. I was liking the fact that we were going back 2 years when we were talking about some of the practices. And when we were hit by COVID, I think a week or so before the actual country shut down and lockdowns happened, we declared work from home. And we started, and the plants were running, but largely the offices were work from home. And there were jokes going all around the place, especially as an HR head, you keep receiving that from your leadership team saying that, people are working on the laptop at the same time, cooking something and stuff like that. But where we've reached right now is that despite the pandemic almost ending now, we've decided we are going to be largely work from home. For all roles which can work from home, which are the office roles, which are the knowledge workforce, which is also some of the workforce at the office at the plants will also be hybrid. So except for roles which are pure manufacturing, pure shop floor driven roles, they will continue to work on site. But there as well, the need of the organization is how do we create more flexibility for them. So they might be working 9 to 5, but what is it that I can do within that to bring in some amount of work-life integration is how we put it. So moving on from flexibility, I think Dr. Monica touched upon, I'm used to a first name in my organization, so, but...
we have a lot of our students working for you.
Correct. So, I was saying, you touched upon workplace culture, and I completely echo that. So what we do around workplace culture is largely going to define how engagement, and that's the kind of differentiator in the engagement piece. So at ACG we are looking at it from 4 pillars. The first one being wellness. Within wellness, I think there's lots of work happening around mental, physical, intellectual. But slowly but surely we are also looking at different lenses. So there's a lens of wellness which is purpose. And what's my spiritual purpose? What's my occupational purpose of being here? And slowly but surely we are trying to shift the lens there. We are also trying to shift the lens to community. So, what do I do as an organization for the environment, for the society around me? I think that's the piece we are looking at, again from an engagement lens. The second pillar I would talk about is experiences, and I think Vinod and Kunj shared, I mean, they've taken away all my talking points. But I think Kunj spoke about processes and looking at the employee life cycle and critical touch points within that. I think we're all also looking at that. But personally, when I reflect back, I think the main touch points are the high moments and the low moments in an employee's life. Whether you look at a promotion, whether you look at someone achieving results way beyond what the targets were, accomplishing a project which seemed very unrealistic. What does the organization do for that person? What does the team do? What does the manager do in those moments? I think becomes very critical to how that person remains engaged for a long period of time. Similarly, I'll talk about low moments, when a person is going through a crisis, when a person is down and out, performance-wise, not gelling with the manager. What's the ecosystem doing at that point, to that individual? Losing employment for whatever reason, performance or otherwise, is also a given in the professional world. But what does the organization do to that individual in that space? I think those are moments which define engagement in the organization. The third piece I'll talk about is the role and the experience that the individual has in the role. So, what's my role and how is it serving the larger organization purpose? Does it meet my purpose? And is there alignment there? And then, there's learning, growth, career aspirations. Am I being rewarded for the strive that I bring in, and the extra work that I put in? So that's the piece that we look at engagement from. And lastly, it's the overall ecosystem. What are the enablers in the ecosystem? Whether it's, I'm saying, is the culture open? Is it largely informal? Is that fun at work? Or is it, I'm coming to work like a robot? So that's the piece we also look at from an engagement lens. So across these four pillars, if I were to look at, my philosophy, my mantra, I would say one is we don't, and this is what I preach, we don't go with saying that, these are our, this is our whistles and these are our trumpets and start blowing them. I think the starting point is where the client is or where the target audience is, and I think Vinod touched upon that through Anubhav and what they do. So it's very important to get in touch with that reality. What are their problems, what are their pain points, what improvements are they seeking, and take things ahead from there. Otherwise, I see a lot of you all make notes, don't take best practices from your back to your organization. Use them where appropriate for your organization. That's how I see it. Second is co-creation. By co-creation, I mean that involve people who are affected by that change into the change. So make them part of the planning, make them part of the designing and the execution of that change. And automatically the ownership, the belongingness to the organization and to that project, to that change becomes much higher. The third one I would talk about is, we do a lot of work in the what space, but it's equally important to look at the experience that we create through the how. So to take an example, one may have a brilliant Mediclaim policy, maybe 20 lakhs, 25 lakhs, whatever. But how one executes it, when someone is in a critical state, family member is hospitalized, what more do you do as an organization beyond that financial help is what creates engagement. And I think that's the philosophy we drive. And last but not the least, I think HR can't do it all and should not even endeavor to do it all. So what's our role is, how do we develop leaders in the organization, the managers in the organization to drive engagement? And how do we build capability there? How do we have conversations and deep work with them to shift their mindset on trust, on empathy, on bringing in a balance between organization requirements, results, and the individual requirements? I think those are things which define engagement for us. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. I think you covered quite a bit. We started by discussing the generations and their expectations is changing so much. And it's so true, even the research shows that in India, which is the youngest country in the world, and Brazil is second youngest, and the demographic across the world is very, very different than what it is for India and Brazil. So the interventions like succession planning is going to be differently executed because many youngsters are not going to stay with us for a very long time, because that's not how they look at career. They'll be with us for a very short time and be 100% contribute to the time they are with us. That's all. That's a very important aspect. And then you talked about that you'll continue to be going into the hybrid. We'll maybe later on we'll talk to others what is your plan and how your sector is planning the entire hybrid operating model. You talked about many things. So one was clearly, which resonates with me, is the entire purpose for the society, purpose for even the employees, and also the ecosystem. So thank you so much. I'm going to come back to you on a question which I have noted for you. Maybe you may not have also been prepared for it, but I'm sure we really need to know how you worked out the compensation part for the work from home. So we'll come to that. Thank you so much. Very insightful. Dipankar, it's a very you're one of the different sector representing consumers sector as a whole. It went through some crisis when it actually hit. So because the way the operating models were different. In your situation, what is your take on it? What's the learning for y'all? And what would be some of the insights you would like to share on how you manage the entire situation, how you manage to go to the hybrid world, and what is it for you all today?
Thank you, Vaishali. Thanks, DVS, for calling me. Yeah, and thanks the audience here. I think as I look back, now we are ending May, so it's almost like 26 months since pandemic. And I had been part either as an audience or as a panel member for the last few years in Mumbai. Engagement as a topic was never hot in Mumbai speaking circuit, which it is now, which itself shows how critical it has become in the last 2 years, and it had been a journey. I'm not audible? Hello, am I better? Yeah. So engagement as a topic has really become pretty in the last 26 months, where almost as I hear others, I can echo right from chairman's level, MD's level, the need to connect to the last mile became apparent. Nothing different from our case, I think. And as I reflect, I would probably put that into 3 baskets and put a different perspective on that. I think, like many, we did all those things, many of them were already spoken about. Assurance from the topmost level around job security, making sure that your increments and bonuses, whatever possible, comes on time, financial aid, medical support, core emergency support group, connecting with people, going digital, trying to conduct everything through digital mode, providing hybrid workforce, all of that happened. But I see this entire journey in actually 3 phases. Phase 1, which is obviously the first pandemic post that, where we were all trying to survive, trying to figure out what best works. Everybody was, let me just pass on with this. And everybody was probably going one step extra to do their bit, both ways. I think most employers, most decent employers did much more than they had generally done. Most employees with probably the FOMO bit came a bit, they were probably contributing a bit more than what they would have generally done. And engagements were pretty high. You would see your team members who generally pack off at 5 would be there available in June till 9. So you could clearly see a need for both to connect. And that probably continued till Q1 of last year, till second wave subsided. And suddenly what we now call as the great resignation started, right? Or the attrition started. And you suddenly think, where is it happening from? From my organization's perspective, I know. So we do this periodic engagement survey, we get the score. and we publish everywhere that we have done this and that. And I could see not only we, many other organizations proudly say that their scores have improved, employees are heavily engaged. And my personal feeling was also very similar. When we were talking, we could see a great sense of indebtedness among people saying, yeah, we think the company supported well, we are engaged, we are really contributing a lot more. And when this year I see even the scores have increased even more, and I see a lot of engaged people, and my attrition is up by 100%. And I think that's the experience for many. And that there's where the dichotomy is cut. I think engagement has to be looked beyond loyalty and retention. And somebody said that you don't need to think around stretching the bit and ensuring that the limited period that the employee stays, make sure he contributes 100%. Because now, after the second phase, I think we are right now on the third phase, where stabilization is happening. We are moving from a work from home to a hybrid, to a lot of offices discussing around why hybrid, why can't we come back to post-20 stage, which is full office. There is clearly a sense of, I would say, conflict between employees who would say, 85% would say, I would decide whether I want to work with this organization given the hybrid arrangement, whereas the management or the organization feels it's high time we come back. More so for organizations like us, where 90% employees have to be in the field 6 days a week. We are a manufacturing, sales and marketing organization. So only those supposedly 10% white collar of the corporate headquarters are blessed to even have this option. The question that we are answering now is, should that be available? Because where does the camaraderie and the pride of being one team then happens? Because clearly there is a sense of, I am not being able to avail this benefit, while some of my organizations are, because they are in a particular position. I think that's a conflict that we are managing. We are also trying to balance out few over the top things we had been doing. I think employees also now realize that while engagement, loyalty, continuing is fine, but the external pool is creating such kind of factors that clearly there is a clear conflict between whether I stay or go back to greener pastures, greener maybe temporarily. I think as I look back after this 2.5 years, I think a huge amount of calibration is going to happen. We have realized that we need to move from engagement to experience, because engagement is in situ, but if you have good experience, you come back again. And it's not have to be a parachute dropping or something that you need from a top level. I think what really would be important going forward, and that's what we have realized, is customer engagement needs to go into individual employee experience, where you exactly get what you want. And as we were actually in the middle of deciding our goal plan for the year, and what we agreed was the engagement principles that we would be following here would be basically around 3C, which is communicate more, provide clarity not around being fun and happy, that's there, but clarity around career, clarity around development, clarity around where I am there in the part of organizational pursuit. And third is provide choice, because choice would be important as we go forward. There won't be any more and more, we would be moving away probably from mass intervention and something which is more customized. I think those are the three things that we are focusing, and that's what the realization is, that let there be calibration happens and more customization happens.
Thank you. I think very well said. And when you were speaking, I was reflecting that it's so true that the interventions were very different in all the three phases. That's extremely true. First phase, it was more of cost. Second and third is more about, second was about engagement, and third is more about engagement and retention, because there's such mass attrition which is happening. And the 3Cs was also very interesting. And I'll come back to you with another question which I've jotted for you. Nishant, it's, I absorbed what you said when you introduced yourself, and therefore I'm reshaping the question, but I'm very keen to ask that question to you. While we all were trying to manage a lot of things on productivity side, engagement side, yours is a sector which did a lot of things for social good also. It directly and indirectly contributed to the entire vaccination movement to various countries, even for India. You never really had got the chance to even stop and think, how did you survive? How did you conquer? And how did you keep the employees engaged?
Good morning.
If it is an out of syllabus question, please let me know.
No, I'm very thankful for asking that interesting question. And first and foremost, I'm quite delighted to see all of you. It's been 3 years, from the virtual Zoom. I'm traveling to a physical, conference. So thank you, Bradstreet, given a chance to, be with this esteemed panelist and a wonderful audience out here. So to answer this question, let me take a minute to, make you understand what NTC Group is all about. So we are into logistics and supply chain, but we are also into manufacturing and EPC and engineering and infra. So it's a diversified group of 4,000 employees spread across India and also internationally. Now the first thing logistics and supply chain industry works, it's a very inclusive industry. It follows that of the current and the former Prime Minister, which means I have people who work in offices and I have people who work on the road. I have people who are transportation workers who could be drivers, and I have people who work in the offices. I have people who are qualified with PhDs, and I have people who are unskilled and non-qualified. So it's a fairly inclusive industry. And in earlier days, this industry was known as, if you have not done anything in life, join logistics. But now with MBA supply chain management coming, some of them have changed this entire complex of industry. And you would see more technology innovations happening here. Now, when the lockdown was announced, I still remember my chairman putting his arm around my head, saying, Nishant, your family is in Mumbai. Rush to Mumbai, don't be in Chennai. And I was contemplating, saying that my wife has told me very clearly, don't come to Mumbai. We have, safeguarded ourselves. You be here. Because if you come, you'll get quarantine. And as luck would have it, 24th was the lockdown. And I took the last run on 23rd, landed at airport here in Mumbai. And I was looking for a taxi. I walked till Santa Cruz station from airport, finally managed to get one taxi and reach home, and then 6 months I was at home only. But in that 6 months, the entire complexion of the industry changed. People who were averse to Zoom started taking interviews on Zoom. So the first thing, there was no layoff. People got salaries in advance, as my friend from Mahindra also said. And what happened is, including the family members, when the vaccination got opened, we ensured that the family members, got vaccinated. Now, while we talk of engagement, one of the things, which I take pride in our organization is that, and being a founder-led organization is that, it's not just birthdays and anniversary to celebrate, but unfortunately, if there is any death, the HR is there. Any member of the family, the HR is there, and HR also pays for the bereavement expenses. That's how we touch the employee. Rather than, being with them during good times, it's also important that HR is there and follows the ritual of that community, whichever the employee belongs to, and support them. So I imagine what was happening. We were into essential services. The government had advised that we were in essential services. Some of my transportation drivers were stuck in different states because every government had different norms. Suddenly there was no hotel for me to make arrangements for them to stay. Some of them were also accompanied by my white-collar workers. Many of them stayed and slept under the truck. And then I had to take, special permissions, special licenses, and ensure that these people were able to transport. So we had permissions to transport vaccination, oxygen cylinder, including medicines. But every crop came up with different rules, and especially the Maharashtra and Gujarat crops were far more law enforcement and strict. Okay, some of them incurred a lot of lathis on their back, but they were doing the things, moving from port to warehouses and ensuring, things were reaching. Thankfully, and unfortunately, we had only 2 deaths. So I'm very glad on that front. We managed to, ensure that all employees, are hale and hearty. People who could work from offices, for them it was a new thing. All this while we used to only do Zoom training or, video conferencing. Now it became a ritual for them. Every morning they had to log in. Now we had to educate managers. Some of the managers, overmanaged. They were micromanagers looking at, attendance online, and some of them, worked offhand. They said, okay, no problem. I trust my employees. So we had to, bring in some rigor, discipline as to when they can have a free time, when they can probably be part of Zoom calls, and sometimes there will be technical glitch. So you have to, improve on your patience. That some people may have some bandwidth issue. Some people may find difficult to come and speak on the screen. Some people may prefer to be behind the screen and speak, and you do the entire working. But it was a unprecedented experience, and it reset the entire organization, so to speak. Now, how do you engage people? I think what we did during those times is that we continued with our business plan. We even hired people. Of course, not to the full extent of what we had budgeted for next year, but at least 50% we started hiring. Now, when you hire, everything was online, doing interviews online, doing onboarding online, ensuring that the person gets all the documents, from Chennai or somewhere. That was the most difficult part in terms of logistical coordination. But we somehow managed. And those employees were equally, patient to, allow and understand that things will work and we will move at pace. Within a month's time, we were back in office. Of course, some of us who could work from home, we would work from home as long as it was allowed to us. But those who were supposed to be in client-facing role or front-end role or doing the operations were back. But then we decided to come up with the plan of hybrid working. People who can work from home. Some of the jobs we demarcated and earmarked that these are the jobs which would work from home. And then there were others who will be on site. Interestingly, I got a lot of feedback and queries from my woman employees saying, "Sir, please call us back to office. It is nightmare to work and do all the roles." Okay, and I wasn't surprised, but we somehow managed to open office, take permission. And sometimes what happens, because you were doing good amount of work for government as well, so it was easy to get those kind of permission. But the challenge is, how do I make the employee reach from home to office? So then, we managed to, find out some transportation, alternatives and, help these people to come to office. Because many of them came to office and cried, saying that, "Boss, I miss this place. I miss that collaboration." So the challenges that we had, just a minute, where, in terms of, how do we, communicate? So we came up with guidelines of what will be formal, informal communication, ensuring that whatever we spoke on Zoom will also be sent as mail, so that no one misses on communication. The second was coordination. How does the manager ensure that every employee who is working offline, online, understands everything? So even if you are going to have a physical meeting, the video is on, so that someone from remotely can also join and not get missed out. The third thing was about collaboration, connection, because let's understand, our career advancement happens with mentoring and collaboration. So how do we collaborate? So managers were told that there will be special 2 hours every day for you to have collaborative discussions. And it is compulsory that the business head attends it. And when you have the business head attending it, everyone will certainly attend and there will be collaboration. Nothing to do on work, but only to do on innovation, something like that. The fourth was, most importantly, was about your in terms of creativity, because people will have individual creativity and there is team creativity. So how do you ensure those creativity comes up? As an individual also, when you move between different office space or workstations, sometimes the ideas clicking, sitting at home, seeing the same, bedroom or whatever room you had, I don't think you will be very creative, unless you are Einstein. But having said that, we need to also ensure that, you create some environment to, get people's creativity out. And that's how you had some team building and some sessions, and we invited some guest sessions we called Kshitij, and had this knowledge session where people would come in and share their insights. And lastly, how do we, infiltrate the culture that we have? In a sense, not infiltrate, how do we integrate the culture we have? How do we set this culture? How do newcomers get to know that this is the culture? Because what happens is sometimes you learn a lot offline at the water cooler breaks. So, we had Buddy and we had some team members, giving them some insights, because people also want to know gossips as well. That's how it builds culture. So we had some of the buddies and we told them that separately have discussion with team members whom we have hired, and you can narrate gossips and don't record it. It was on Zoom, sometimes you record it, okay? That's how we build, that insights. And I guess that's how we made it. Thank you.
Thanks, Nishant. I think the first you articulated what were all your challenges, what you faced, how your staff, your truck drivers face, and then you articulated what you actually then did. I also really like the fact, and I'm sure others have also done this, because it was so critical to educate our managers, because many times it were the managers and how the employees as a whole at the last level feel engaged or disengaged. And many of my CHRO friends have shared stories of how managers behaved, especially as the Pankaj mentioned on the first phase, because it was new for everyone, and that manager education was extremely critical. Ramakrishna, can I call you Ram? RK, okay. RK, I thought you must be really waiting for a long time. There was a long discussion and everyone has done so much of work that this experience really matters a lot. So what would be some of your insights on and your learning you would like to share on how you've managed to engage the employees?
Yeah, I think first of all, thank you so much for calling me here. It's more than being a panelist here. I think it's being in the audience and listening to all of them, large organizations, how they manage to do some of the things. It was, if you want to move something, the smaller the easier it is, the larger it becomes as much difficult. So hearing some of the stories from the large organizations and how they manage to move the needle on engagement during the tough times, I think is very heartening. Thank you so much for that. And it also made me tick off a lot of points that I wanted to cover. So having said that, I think being a small, young organization, somebody who, we just 1,000 people, very small compared to most of the other people here, but very, very young. Our average age is 23. And I think with that came a very different set of challenges. And I think after the first lockdown, when they first opened up after 21 days, is when everybody was in office, back in office, including me, including my CEO, everyone. So I think we just took 21 days off from work from office. That's about it. So how do you then kind of look at managing people, engaging people in an environment where everybody else is working from home? I'm talking about the average 23-year-old whose other friends, I think 90% of their friends were back in their hometowns and chilling, and some working, a lot of them chilling. And here's my employee who is day in and day out, going out and collecting money. Because in the initial stages, it was all about collections. For any asset companies or finance companies, I think the key part that we did for the last 2 years was to ensure that our portfolios are, alive. A lot of changes happening at the regulators' end. They kept changing norms. They kept changing, moratoriums and so on and so forth. So how do you ensure that the portfolio quality remains good, so that then you're able to go back and commit to the employees that, boss, your jobs are safe. If the organization is safe, then your jobs are safe. And who keeps the organization safe? It is the employees, right? By doing what they need to do. So in a very tough environment, employees going out, working on the field, working with customers. It's not just about the employees and their families, but the customers that they represent or talk to, those customers going through the hardships, and particularly given the profile of customers we have, which is lower middle income groups, the sole breadwinner passes away, and the employee has to go and then talk to the customer about the the repayment plan. You imagine the kind of stress that customer is the employee is going through. I mean, while I can empathize with what is happening with the customer, but this mental stress, the levels of empathy that the employees have to build to be able to manage this, I think that is where the engagement had to kind of click for us. To how do you ensure that the employee is then able to do it again next day? You've done it one day maybe, but again the next day, again the third day, again the fourth day. How much, while we did not have an employee casualty, but we had hundreds of customers who passed away, primary customers, which are the sole breadwinners. So how do you help employees manage this level of sadness around them and continue to be engaged with an organization where comparable group is doing something very different? So a lot of them will feel, why am I stuck in this job? I think there's a question mark about the job, and how they're helping the community by doing the job that they're doing, I think was the most critical. And we tried doing it in several ways. I mean, communication, getting people together, using technology, all of that. But I think what worked the most was the last mile. So if you were to kind of help the managers, the regional business leaders to kind of take care of the employees, work the best than anything else. None of the other gimmicky stuff made any difference. So what we initially started off telling the managers, engage the employees. Most of the managers took on the parent mode. I mean, cut birthday cakes, take them out for dinner, and then kind of tell them have a chat once in a while. So we said you have to go beyond that. I mean, I don't think a parent mode is. None of the parents are doing that with the kids nowadays. So you can't do that to your employees. So you have to move out from that parent mode, move into a lot more about being a partner, being there for them, trying to tell them the purpose of what they're doing, explaining why they're going and collecting that money. How is it impacting not just them, the organization, and the overall community? I mean, imagine if 3 or 4 of the finance companies go bust, what will happen to the overall economy? I think everyone is playing such a huge role in managing this pandemic, and when it started becoming clearer and clearer to the employees, I thought they became a lot more engaged, a lot more wedded to the job that they were doing, and that kind of started moving things for us. So no silver bullet, a lot of patience, a lot of work, and maybe understanding your clientele. I think that becomes the most important piece. Thanks.
Thank you, RK. I think you were the last for us to go to, but I think the business case or the problem statement for you was very different. While everyone was looking at how do we work in a online mode, you all were in the given scenario when 90% of India is on online mode. How do I ask my employees to work on ground? So it was, I think for many of us here, also had a combination of that. Part of the organization, especially in the manufacturing side, was also facing the same challenges. Thank you so much for the insight. I'm going to just ask Ankita, just maybe a time check, because if I go one more round, we'll be crossing the lunch. And so therefore just wanted to, it's what time we need to stop? 5 minutes. A lot of questions for the our eminent speaker here, but I'll not be that selfish. First, what I'll do is maybe request if there are any questions from the audience, and I'll be also the part of audience, and I'll also pose some of these questions. So maybe we can open the floor for these questions. I'm sure there are a lot of reflections for you all. There's so much of learning, at least for me also, from these our CHRO sitting here, and doctor also, of course. Any questions from your side? Yes, there are questions. Just stop me from answering it, okay? Being a consultant, I love to talk.
Yeah, this is Kaushal here. We are from CDAC, myself, my friend Nitin.
We can't hear you, sir.
Is this audible now? Yeah. Yeah. So it was really nice to hear about these experiences, by leaders, whereas you share how you engage the employees. So my question especially is like about effectiveness of the engagement. How did you ensure that the engagement which you're doing with the employees, it was effective? So did you use any tool for that? Like we have online meeting tools, platforms, which made everyone life easy, and now this is everybody well versed about it. So what tool did you use to measure the effectiveness of the engagement?
Okay, so let me slightly rephrase if it's all right, sir. So one, we did a lot of interventions. So how do we know that our employees were engaged? So what was the outcome of it? What were some of the measures? And second, what are some of the tools which, as he mentioned, which we used? I think tools and a lot of things they did talk about employee experience, but maybe you mean by technology tools, right? Okay. Surveys also they talked about, but over to you all. Anyone wants to take that question?
Yeah. So, very interesting question. So, I'm representing a business that's the management education. We deal with students, and the interaction between a faculty and a student, the outcome that's seen is instant. So, if the engagement is not there, I think the outcome is also not there, because for us it's an instant outcome. And there's a lot of emotions that people bring to the workplace. So when you're working at the workplace, it's not just physical workload, but it's a lot of emotional workload that we all carry. And if we carry these emotions positively, then only you will see the positive engagement, the outcome is positive. Otherwise, I don't think there would be the effectiveness of the engagement unless the emotional quotient is in place. So,
Sure.
I mean, in our business, I think we saw instant,
Results.
impacts. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I mentioned in the beginning about the culture part. And for our students, our product is intangible, and we are setting careers of people. So that's a very big mandate that we are. I mean, it's a lot of mandate that we carry with us. We have to deliver. So I think the emotional quotient or the engagement is very important.
Sure, sure. Vinod.
Can I add to what Doctor has said? So there are two phases, I would say. First phase would be creating, and second phase would be retaining to ensure. And the way you're saying that, how do we ensure that people are engaged and that it's effective? Okay. So there's a framework we continuously use in the organization, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. We say that don't take our processes for granted, don't take our programs for granted. Check what's good, what's working, what's not working, and what needs to be created. Okay, Brahma, create, Vishnu, sustain, and Mahesh, things which don't work for you, please eliminate. Alright, continuously you'll have to keep an agenda on this. Don't take anything for granted. Alright, that's from the first approach side. Secondly, I did touch about this point that while you are making something, create it with design thinking approach. So you understand how an employee's journey is built. Understand what are the pain points, what are the issues, how can you make it better, and then you start creating processes which are much more closer to the actual requirement of a person. Alright, so with design thinking, you also have to use something which currently is a fad. It's something that's taking shape. It's called agile project management. Nothing major. You start creating something, and off the cuff you start taking feedback, saying that I have created a prototype. Is it good? Is it working? Is it something closer to your liking? So if you are going to the employee in a design thinking approach, asking them what do you want, asking them, taking focus group discussions, keep checking back with them while you're creating the product, saying, does it meet your requirement? Is it something that you're looking at? Are there alternatives to it? Tell us how it could be made better. So use frameworks, use methods, templates that could actually help you. After you have implemented something, like I think Kunj did express it in his discussion, that do frequent check-ins. All right. Engagement is now not the yearly engagement surveys when you do a Q12, Gallup Q12 and say, okay, yes, your employees are engaged. It is there at an overall level. But there are different people, there are different personas that you're handling. A first persona is a person who's actually walking in and experiencing the company from day one, and perhaps a 0 to 6 months old person. A second persona is the kind that RK did mention, saying that the 23-year-old guy, he will expect something differently than what different from you from what a 35 to 40-year-old guy would expect. So you would have to understand the personas and start addressing what kind of personas are predominantly existing in the organization and how you can actually keep engaging them and create those kind of experiences. So frequent check-ins, something new that we are experimenting. We have, I didn't mention, we have a chatbot. We are actually experimenting with NLPs, natural language programming. Alright, we are actually looking at what is the conversation in the chatbots, because we have 20,000 conversations per month in the chatbot system itself, in the mobile chatbot systems. What are those questions that are being asked? What are the kind of questions that are going to getting escalated? Start understanding the pulse of the organization through that, also seeing that what are the pain points people have and how are they approaching it. You can actually start proactively creating those solutions. So frequent, this one, I think Kunj may be able to give better inputs on the frequent check-in points, but I think if a combination of all of this, of all of it, is still something that will work, may not be the final solution, but then.
Right. So I think with respecting the time, maybe we can take one or two more questions. Yeah, you have a question?
Myself, Vijay Vishwakarma, I represent the company called Sterling Wilson Renewables Energy. I have a small question, maybe, I don't know, maybe just related to the topic or no. Since we were totally focusing on during the tough times on the COVID, how do we engage the employees? But from the organization perspective, somehow that's my personal perspective in terms of how have we managed in terms of succession planning? Because in my current organization itself, or maybe a few organizations which I've been working before also, we have lost few people, okay, maybe the head level of the PD head. So how about the question of business continuity? Because that is very important, relevant also for organizations to sustain these tough times. So what steps have we taken in terms of, because we are totally focusing on the engaging the employees, but on the other aspect, how are we looking at the business continuity also?
Sure.
So succession planning becomes very important for us.
Understood. I think our panelists were focusing on engagement, but that's a very interesting question. Does anyone want to take it?
So yeah, that's a very interesting question. In fact, on business continuity, I'd like to just share some of my experience of our company. As you know, Tata Power is an essential services company. So we had to have many of our employees, most of our employees on the job. I mean, they could not actually work from home or work from anywhere during this time, because the plants had to be operated, the projects which we had taken up had to be constructed, the distribution power engineers had to be there and supply. So this was a situation we were looking at, and business operations had to go on. They could not halt. So what actually we did, and many of my co-panelists also talked about it, and that is the center of the whole thing, is communication. But how the organization, how the organization's leadership communicates with the employees. And we had a lot of initiatives around that, right from our CEO and MD, addressing all employees on various digital medium and telling them. But what we realized is that when, and Ram also talked, RK also talked about it, that what is the mindset of the employee when they have to come to work in such an ambiguous situation of the pandemic, when maybe their neighbors, their family members are all at home. So what motivates them? And what we realized as a learning was that it is the purpose. And then our whole communication was focused on that aspect of purpose, that we were not just doing a regular job, but we were actually contributing to the nation. Because if everybody had to work from home, if essential services like railways, hospitals had to function, then electricity is the lifeline. So by going to work and actually sustaining our operations, we are actually contributing much more than a normal job. So I think when employees connected to that purpose, the way that communication was designed, I think we did not face any resistance from any employee in terms of, yes, there were apprehensions, there was anxiety in employees' mind as well, but we assured them that we will take care, not only the employees but also the family members, and not only our regular employees but also contractual employees. So when you talk about business sustainability, the way the manning is there today in most organizations, limited part of the work is done by the permanent employees. There's a lot of contractual workforce. So for business operations to be sustained, you cannot ignore them. So when we had to keep our plants running, I mean, while we could provide employee transport to our employees and there were housing colonies, we could safely bring them to office, take them back. But what about the contract employees? And the pandemic really redefined, I feel, the definition of the word essential, because there are functions like housekeeping, there are functions like security, and the staff working there were very essential. I mean, we can't really do without them. So we actually took care of those employees also. We talked to our business partners, our contractors. We created temporary housing facilities in many of our plants for these employees to take care of them, so that they are available for work and business goes on. But it's a extremely important point. I mean, we have to balance both employee engagement and business sustenance.
Right. Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, see, I'll just share the examples and what experiences what we did in our organization. Succession planning in service industry becomes very important. So we did an exercise called, identifying of critical positions first and critical people. Now these are two different things, and it took a mammoth effort to even make people understand that you have to identify the parameters. Once you identify the position, these are the parameters, or these are the basis on which you feel this position is critical. Then you know what kind of behavior and competencies you need to train people, right? Number two is the critical people. Some people may be very critical. They may be one of those people, Man Friday, Woman Friday, who can do things for you, okay? But they are talent, okay? So how do we harness them? Number two, it's an investment. Today, unfortunately, the younger generation don't have the patience to work beyond 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. So, the question of succession doesn't come. Number two, organizations also don't want to invest. Succession planning requires behavioral competencies, training those people on those competencies. Also, various, dynamic changes that happen. So, how do we make a person work about those culture? Second thing is, I've also seen in my experience that managers are insecure to identify the successes. Many often middle managers are the culprit. They don't want their successes. So in our organization, there's a KRA that every manager should transfer 5% of their headcount to different division. If they don't do, their career is affected. It's an unwritten rule. Okay. Sometimes our chairman or we will only pick up. I'll give a list saying, sir, these are the people who are bright talent, but the B word is probably saying that I don't have anyone to probably replace that person. Nothing doing. It's a mandate from HR. Let make it happen. So sometimes you have to do force, and make this happen. Number three, you have to be transparent and tell people, after they spend some time that, hey, listen, we are looking at your successor. We want to educate. We want to groom you. We want to, train you. Many people don't do that. Now there is a high potential, talent management program. Now there is a school of thought, which says talent during the exit interview, hey, you are part of talent program, but we will not disclose you. But I come from a school of thought where you tell talent that you are part of talent. We will do everything. We will observe you. We will give you project on the job to learn, develop, and also implement. And then we'll see how we can progress your career path. So it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. Or sometimes you need to also come up with some ground rules saying that up to certain positions we'll only hire internally. That can also help at times. So maybe some of this you can probably use. Thank you.
Thanks. I think very well said. Critical roles versus critical people are different, and how succession planning. It's a very intense topic by itself, and I'm sure many of my friends would like to contribute here. But time is up, and thank you so much. I humbly want to thank each one of you all Your rich experience and insight has really enriched us. I'm taking a lot of notes. There were a lot of questions I wanted to ask myself, but I think we need to respect the time. Thank you. It was my it's honor and privilege to be moderating. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vishali, for the wonderful moderation of the panel, and thank you, panelists, for sharing their insight with us. Before we close, I would request Nena Acharya, Associate Director, Operations, Learning and Economic Insight Group from Dun & Bradstreet, to share a few thoughts, please. Welcome, Nena.
Thank you, Ankita. I mean, I was sitting out there and listening to each and every one of you, and I only felt gratitude in my heart for all of you present here. Thank you so much, Dr. Monica, Mr. Sarosh, Mr. Vinod, Mr. Kunj Vihari, Mr. Nishant, Mr. Dipankar, and Mr. Ramakrishna. Thank you so very much. It is really very interesting to know that enterprises invest significantly for the customers and focuses more on the external customers. But basically, who are the most important internal customers for you? Your employees. And for good or bad reasons, COVID actually taught us that it is perpetually an impossible task to keep your internal customers happy, irrespective. And I think each one of you need to give a pat on your back, honestly, because you are able to do that. And today, when we're sitting here in a room interacting with each other, and we are putting a face to a name and a personality to a face and name, it's great. But putting empathy to a face, to a name, and a personality is something which is an integral part of the engagement, I would say, strategy that each one of you had to really focus on during this period. And now that things are coming back to normal, it just feels good to see that we have embraced technology. We have identified our high potential employees. We have learned that transparency is a way moving forward. We have also learned to maintain an equilibrium between technology and human engagement. So I think this topic, effective employee engagement in a hybrid work environment, becomes so imperative for us. We have our business pressures and we have our people pressures as well. And I think this discussion gave a lot of key takeaways for all of you. Needless to say, I think, Vishali, thank you so much for maneuvering this discussion very well. And thank you, audiences, for sharing your views and asking the valid questions. I did have a question, though, but in the interest of time, I decided not to. But a food for thought for all of us is that we really work on our employees who we believe are high potential employees and who can really work. But considering that the market is opening now, retaining this set of high potential employees to make sure that they feel valued is something that all of us need to work on. So how do we kind of maintain that equilibrium, make sure that they are engaged, they feel important and wanted for the organization, and also have a growth path is something which each one of us has to think on and make it a part of our integral strategy for employee engagement and keeping them motivated for good. So thank you again. And I was not supposed to say anything, but I was just listening, and I said I have to show my deep gratitude to each and every one of you for taking time out from your schedule, and all of you, dear audiences, for actually making time out from your schedules and coming here and participating. Thank you very much.
I would request Nana to hand over a token of appreciation to all our speakers. can we have one group picture with all the panelists? Thank you so much. Today's session wouldn't have been as a participation of all our esteemed panelists and of course all our attendees. I would like to thank each one of you for taking out time and being part of the session today. A special thanks to KT Somaiya Institute of Management for their support to this initiative, without whom this session wouldn't have been possible. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please join us for lunch.